Anyone who actively goes to the gym probably takes their training sessions really seriously. But yet so many neglect the recovery period. As Mike Metzer says, when you're training, you dig yourself into a hole. But then when you recover, you fill that hole back up. So if you just keep training nonstop, you keep digging that hole, you're not going to get anywhere. He also says training and recovery are both exactly equally important. 50-50. Not one is more important than the other. Starting off on that note, if you know who Mike Metzer is, then you know how big of an advocate he is for recovery. The biggest advice he gives out is to let your muscles rest, and that sounds pretty stupid. So what does that actually mean? That means don't be hammering weights 5 times a week nonstop. I know there are certain workout splits that people follow where maybe they train arms on one day, legs on the other day, core on a different day. But that doesn't really work for recovery, because even if you're just putting stress on your arms, that stress is still going to be spread throughout the entire body, so you're not going to be able to properly recover. And this recovery period can take a very long time. Maybe you can go 5 days, maybe a week without training something, depending on how hard you go. But that doesn't necessarily mean don't do any exercises completely, and I'm going to get into that later. So stick with me. Now on to our next point. It has to do with mental health. If you're stressed and have an anxious mind, you aren't going to be able to properly recover because there's certain mechanisms that go on in your body. It actually favors the breakdown of muscle and all sorts of nasty stuff that you don't want. So to not be stressed, you can meditate. And also, so the mind, think of the mind to the body is like a two-way highway. You can go up or you can go down. The body can communicate with the mind can communicate with the body. So to calm your nerves, you might actually need to calm your body. So now we're going to move on to our next point. Move around throughout the day when it feels good. Not like your training sessions where you're pushing hard, you're giving it all you have. Just something light. Don't be a complete couch potato. Maybe do a couple light push-ups or do a stretch that really hits the spot. And that's, in a way, is going to be meditative. You know, like yoga practices. That's kind of what they do. They're just doing light exercises, light stretches. They're not pushing it. That's why I said don't just stop exercising completely on your rest days. And quick note, cardio will improve your recovery. Doing light cardio will get blood flowing. And on top of that, when you actively do cardio consistently, you get better circulation. You guys understand the correlation between that. Better circulation, that means more nutrients to your muscle, and in turn, better recovery. And when you do cardio, you get adaptation that's different from just hypertrophy. This adaptation is that you have microscopic blood vessels that stay with you permanently. So you build new blood vessels. You won't see them. It's not going to be like your bicep vein, but they're microscopic, and it doesn't matter if you stop training or stop doing anything completely, even atrophy all your muscles, they're here for good and they will always aid your circulation. Staying on this topic, and this will actually have to do with everything that we're going to talk about later, but don't be in fight or flight mode. You want to be in rest and digest. So many people are usually in fight or flight mode. And I think, no, I'm not in fight or flight mode. When people think of fight or flight mode, they think of these panic attacks where you're panting and your heartbeat's going nonstop. No, it can be very moderate. You can be sitting down and you can be in fight or flight. You can be doing all sorts of stuff and be in fight or flight. And that's what most people are in all the time. So how do you check this? Well, I don't know how accurate this test is, but I like to use it, and it seems relatively accurate with the other symptoms that I'll talk to you about. Which nose hole are you breathing with? Obviously, if you're sprinting, you're probably going to be breathing with both of them. And if your nose is always clogged and you're breathing with your mouth, man, what are you doing? If you're breathing with your left nose hole, that means you are in rest and digest. You are recovering. If you're breathing with your right, that means you are in fight or flight. Once again, I don't know how accurate this test is, and I don't even know what the percentage of accuracy is. It's probably not 100%, so you can also go off other symptoms. Like I said, heartbeat. If you feel like your heartbeat is like boom, 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 boom. If you feel like your blood pressure is maybe high, maybe you're really like your veins are out, your muscles are uncontrollably tight, maybe your shoulders are way high up. And another one is maybe your mind is kind of anxious. You're like thinking about random stuff. You're going all over the place in your head. That can also be a sign of being in fight or flight. On to our next point. So if you find yourself in fight or flight, what you can do is alter your breathing. I wouldn't recommend for you to breathe super deep like many practitioners recommend. What I would recommend for you to do is breathe light. But what depends is your exhalation. Make your exhalation longer than your inhalation. A good number to go off of is maybe breathe in for 4 seconds and then exhale for 8 seconds. Or you could try inhaling for 5 seconds and doing an exhalation for 10 seconds. But don't be inhaling gallons of air. breathe light. There are many benefits to breathing light, and you can check out everything about that in this book. To further better your breathing, don't just be using your belly completely. I know many recommend, oh, only breathe with your belly, chest breathing is awful. Yeah, most chest breathers, they're in a really bad position. But why is that? Well, because they're using their extra muscles for breathing, like their shoulders, maybe their neck muscles, or other muscles that aren't necessarily made for breathing. What you want to do is maybe lightly use your chest for breathing. Just make sure that your traps aren't used for that, or any other muscle that, like I said, is unnecessary. Breathing slowly and having a longer exhalation works on getting you out of the fight or flight mode, because your vagus nerve is being stimulated when you breathe slow. And the opposite happens when, let's say, your fight or flight mode is activated. Your body naturally wants to breathe fast and you feel like you can't get enough air. So like the mind and body, you can see this is also a two-way circuit, which you can interrupt by purposely controlling your breathing. This applies to your training too. Even when you're training, always be breathing with your nose. And when you're recovering, focus on your breath, right? Breathe slowly. Don't overdo on the breath, because that's actually going to slow your recovery between sets. Next is you want to have muscle control. You guys have probably seen the freaky stuff people used to be able to do on Natty Life's channel. But if you know about muscle control, then you know that it's equally as important to be able to flex your muscles as it is to relax them. When your muscles are always contracted, or just when your muscles are contracted in general, that actually halts the recovery process. Not completely, but it definitely degrades it. Your muscles recover much better when they're relaxed and fully relaxed, which is actually harder to do than you might think. So actively try to relax your muscles. Maybe do yoga nidra or do some other practice. Just sit on your couch maybe and pay attention. Like, try to move your traps down. Try to relax your fingertips. There's a lot of parts in the body that can be relaxed, like fascia, which I'm not going to get into too much, but it's basically a thin covering that covers all of your muscles, and it can tighten and do all sorts of stuff. But most importantly, it can very easily and very commonly contribute to tightness. Now, also eating very frequently can also impact recovery, because when let's say you're someone who eats 3,000 calories a day, but instead of eating a lot of smaller calorie meals, you just eat 1,500 calories 2 times a day, you're going to have more time for autophagy and all sorts of parts of your body and mechanisms to take place that will help the recovery process. You can look into this more. It's all over YouTube, intermittent fasting. But I'll give you this big tip. If you're someone who eats 5 meals a day, don't instantly cut down to 2 or 1. Just take it slow. Maybe, slowly cut down the calories you eat in the 5th meal. Then remove it altogether. Now you're eating 4 meals a day. Then cut down the calories in your 4th meal. Then get down to 3. On and on and on. Because I doubt your body is instantly going to be capable of eating 1,500 calories in one meal without being used to it. Your body is used to having a lot of small, frequent meals. It's not going to have the acid, and it's not going to be prepared. So just take it slow. And lastly, maybe take a hot bath, or maybe a cold shower, maybe alternate. There are some studies where cold showers can affect hypertrophy, but I think if you're not taking them just right after you train, or you're giving it some time after you train, then I think you'll be perfectly fine. And hot baths, they're also something you can do, just lay down and relax, maybe a sauna. If that's what you want to do, then that's perfectly fine. I usually don't do them because I don't find them necessary, but they can easily help the process of recovery, and there's all sorts of other benefits that come with some cold exposure and heat exposure. And then that's it. Make sure to keep taking recovery seriously and have a great day.